In this episode of More Influence and Impact, we are joined by Chris Noble, who is a music composer and educator who utilizes the therapeutic aspects of music. Today, we are going to discuss with Chris as he shares his insights on how music can be used beyond entertainment as a functional tool for stress relief, concentration, and even immune system enhancement. Welcome to More Influence and Impact, Chris.
Hey, Celia. Thanks so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, excited for you to be here. So, a quick, deeper intro about you. You're based in Vancouver, Canada. Chris is a musician, DJ, and workshop facilitator. He composes therapeutic music with elements like binaural beats, 432 hertz tunings. His researches and performances have spanned globally, including Egypt, South Africa, and Canada. Cool. So you've traveled all around the world doing what you love, researching. So I'm excited to dive into some of those topics today.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's
Yeah.
go.
So tell us about your history, your background, what led you to get into doing what you're doing today?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, music started right almost since I was born. I found my parents had a piano, around age 5, 6. I would come home from my beginnings of school just feeling like I needed to release some emotion. I wasn't the biggest fan of school growing up, and I found my piano just became this basically my therapist, for lack of a better term. And it was just this outlet I had. I wasn't really intending on being a musician for my childhood. I thought I was going to be, a professional athlete. I thought I was going to be many other things.
Hmm.
Never thought I'd be a musician. Music for me was purely a de-stressor. It was a way to just express and come home from maybe a bit more of a challenging day and just be able to release and relax through the piano. But then as I got older, I formed a rock band when I was in high school, and then had the epiphanies of like, wow, playing music with other human beings, that's really fun. Maybe I want to explore that a little bit more. And then after high school, I just found myself obsessing more and more and more over music, far more than athletics and other things that I was interested in. So I decided, let's study it. Let's dive deeper into this passion. And after I got out of college, my first gig as a musician was working at senior homes, at retirement homes, and I got to see right after school, like right out of college, the impact of music that went far beyond entertainment. And of course, entertaining through music's awesome. And you can do so much more with it. As I was seeing at these old age homes, these senior homes, I was animating people into life. I felt like a bit of a magician behind the piano. And even
Mm.
something so simple like playing an Elvis song or a Ray Charles song or a Beatles song or something that's from the time period of these folks that were in the senior homes, it would bring their brain and their reality back to the age that they probably first heard that song, and their body would almost respond in kind to that neurological stimulation of, oh, this is a song from my prom or from my childhood or from,
Mhm.
when I was 20 years old. It's amazing for me. It was amazing to see how the body and the mind would respond to that. So fast forward another 10 years, I just became more and more obsessed with like, what is going on? Like, how
Mhm.
is this happening? What is going on with your brain, with your body when music seems to have an impact that is far deeper than just entertainment. So I discovered binaural beats, 432 hertz tuning, and all these other frequencies and ways that we can use sound and music to not only do therapeutic types of modalities, but also just to have a functional situation. For example, I first got into binaural beats because of concentration and needing to
Mhm.
focus more. So there's lots of pragmatic and practical ways we can use music. And I just spent the rest of my life trying to figure out how I can reverse engineer that, write that, compose that for others, but also teach other people to do that for themselves. Because if we can start to create our own music, we can create essentially our own sound-based medicine for ourselves and therapeutic.
Mhm.
It's very powerful.
Mhm. Didn't Edgar Casey say that sound is the medicine of the future?
Absolutely, him and a lot of other great
Yeah.
minds. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's true, and I got into binaural beats a similar way. I was probably 2 or 3 years ago, and I've been into sound healing for a long time, and I don't know, somehow I ended up on YouTube finding something, music for concentration, and it was binaural beats, and I remember I could just put my earbuds in and just get to work and deep dive for a couple hours on a project, and it's really transformed my life. And then you and I connected because you're helping me to create a custom binaural beats track for my own business and for my clients. So this has become something that you're passionate about, you advocate for, and it's also become a service within Chris Noble Music. So can you tell us about Chris Noble Music and all that you do and who you serve and your offerings?
Yeah, 100%. And it's evolving. It's really fun because I have no
Mhm.
idea where it's going, I'll be honest. I mean, thing is that it started for me as a function of I needed to do it for myself. So
Yeah.
I discovered, much like yourself, actually almost the exact same, Celia, was I needed concentration, to improve my concentration, to improve my focus. And I found binaural beats also on YouTube. I literally typed in study music, and I got
Uh-huh.
binaural beats through that. And I remember the first day, I still remember it. I was at a cafe and I was blown away. I looked at the clock, put on the binaural beats, did my thing, looked back at the clock, and something like 2 hours had passed. And it felt like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And I needed to know what just happened. And I think what one of the things that binaural beats do, and they do a lot, is they put you into flow state, and they
Yeah.
can actually change your brainwave state. And really quickly, what I'm doing with one of the first things I did with Chris Noble Music was reverse engineer these things, because there actually isn't much of any, certainly no traditional or standard education on
Yeah.
how to write a binaural beat, how to create a binaural beat, really, for that
Okay.
matter. So I spent quite a long time reverse engineering it. And what I realized is with binaural beats is basically what's happening is it's a thing called brain entrainment. So
Mhm.
your brain will conform to other stimuli, to other frequencies. So if you're putting a binaural beat, and the binaural beats, for everyone watching and listening, you need to have headphones, because you're taking a very specific frequency that's going to go in one ear and a different frequency it's going to go in your other ear. And what it does is it creates an interference pattern through your brain going in from one ear and into the other. And what it does is, let's say you have 10 hertz going in this ear and 15 hertz going in your other ear. That creates a difference of 5 hertz. So
Mhm.
that means your binaural beat is a 5 hertz binaural beat, meaning that your brainwave state is going to go into that exact frequency of 5 hertz. So if you want to sleep and really calm down, you might play a binaural beat of 2 hertz, like a delta wave or something really
Mhm.
slow, and a big long wave to slow your body down, to slow your mind down. Or if you're playing sports, or if you want to do some high concentration, you'll do a higher binaural beat of maybe 15 hertz or 20 hertz, and like the alpha or gamma wave. And all of that does is shift your brainwave state using frequency and sound. And the cool part is you don't have to think about it. I can
Mhm.
be in a very unproductive state of mind, and I put on a binaural beat, and it just does what it does. And
Yeah.
that's the beauty of it. So with Crystal Music, I'm trying to develop more and more tools like this for people to be able to use in their everyday life, like what we're doing, Celia, and creating meditations for your clients, but bringing real results with music and
Mhm.
sound. It's functional.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I just love this. We're going down the rabbit hole, y'all. Like, get ready, buckle your seatbelts on. This is such exciting stuff because I've been working with the Silva method, Jose Silva. And if you know our listeners and viewers have ever heard of Jose Silva, definitely look him up because he did research on alpha brain state and specifically like how it affects us and how it can actually open up gifts inside of us, intuitive gifts that our intuition can become predictable. And so I've been going through a Silva program since about 6 weeks ago. And I was in acupuncture yesterday and I've been working on my intuitive gifts. And my acupuncturist said, okay, I just put this point in, I put a needle in this point, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm going to let you trust your intuition. And so a few minutes before she came to check on me, I got the message, she's coming to check on you. And then all of a sudden I felt my eyes like dilate. My eyes were closed and I felt my eyes dilate and this rush of energy go into my eyes. And I said, focus. This is about focus. So she came in the room and I said, Tammy, the point is about coming into focus. And she's like, oh my gosh. And she was blown away. And so the point was all about vision and like having vision and being able to see in all directions. So I've always been an intuitive person, but getting my intuition to a point where it's predictable, that I can rely on it's not something that is a luxury for us. Just like healthy food and good produce shouldn't be a luxury for us, like accessing our intuition is not a luxury. It's not like a nice to have. It's something that we can truly have. And that has all been done through working specifically with the alpha, the brain state, binaural beats, and theta as well.
Yeah, 100%. And my other passion is ancient history, the
Yeah.
more lesser known aspects of our history that get lost to time, because the ancients talk about this all the time. When I was in Egypt, as an example, they talk about getting your they talk about the 360 senses we all have. I mean, we talk
Okay.
about the five senses, but the ancient Kemet teachings talk about almost like spherical, full circle of senses, 360 of them.
Mhm.
And, they talk about them the same way. It's not a nice to have, it's an absolute
Yeah.
essential to have. And the way they would design their buildings, the way they would design their civilization, at least at certain parts of these histories, seems to really, they really design them with sound in mind.
Mhm.
Many other things too, certainly heightened consciousness and whatnot. But I'll focus on sound specifically because they're finding there's a whole branch of archaeology called archaeoacoustics, actually, and
Mhm.
they're using sound and the acoustics of a space to measure significant properties. And what they're finding is a lot of these ancient temples, pyramids, they all are resonant structures, meaning they produce sound, produce specific frequencies, and they also, when you're inside these things, they alter your state of mind based on the sounds and the acoustics of the space. So it's like they understood in ancient times how powerful sound really is. And I believe that they were using it for everything. And that's where I'm kind of coming back to full circles. Sound is a full spectrum experience. I mean, light, when we
Mhm.
think of sound, we think of what we hear, but sound is truly everything because sound is vibration, it's
Mhm.
frequency. When we're looking at light, that's the visible light spectrum. What is that? It's still frequency. It's just frequency that our eyes can interpret versus different
Mhm.
frequencies that our ears interpret, but it's all vibration. It's all frequency. So the ancients knew this. Ironically, not ironically, interestingly, things, structures like the Great Pyramid are actually tuned to specific
Yep.
frequencies. The Great Pyramid itself is tuned to 432 hertz.
Yep.
And so you start to see a lot of these anomalies. Stonehenge, they have a weird acoustic anomaly, and this is not the only place that does this, where you stand in a certain area and you can speak, and then it bounces your voice perfectly around the structure, and you can hear it like way in the distance, as if the person's speaking right beside you. I was in the Hypogeum in Malta, and it's the same thing. There's one space you can speak in, and there's a huge underground complex that's thousands of years old. And you speak in one area, and it perfectly amplifies throughout the entire
Wow.
structure, as if it's like an ancient PA system. I mean,
Mhm.
they built with this in mind. So I feel like a lot of the sound stuff, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, Celia. It's like a rediscovery of binaural,
Mhm.
rediscovery of 432 hertz, because I feel that the ancients knew this to such a deep degree.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely knowledge that's just been lost and tucked away over time. I know when I was taking my sound healing training that it was discussed that there were rooms in the pyramids that were tuned for healing as well. And so I had never heard the whole pyramid being tuned before. That's really neat.
Yeah, I was lucky enough when I was in Egypt in 2019. I was with Dr. Robert Schock and a whole bunch of these really amazing researchers, archaeologists, and we went into the King's Chamber inside the Great Pyramid, and I got to lay inside the sarcophagus, the granite
Mhm.
box in the middle of it. And the our guide Mohammed, his son was there with us that day, and he just looked down. We had a nice little bond, and he looked down. He's like, "Hey man, you should start to chant. Just chant something. Who cares what?"
Mhm.
So I started, and I felt so much sensation throughout my whole body
Mhm.
vibrationally while I was chanting. And I was in the same sarcophagus granite box that apparently a lot of very famous people throughout history, Napoleon, supposedly Jesus, other amazing, iconic historical figures have been in the same place that I was in chanting. And as I was chanting, everyone else in the room kind of got into the mode of that, and it felt so good. And so all of us, 30 of us, started to just kind of nonsensically chant inside the Great Pyramid. And every single one in the room had an experience. And these were all pretty, let's say, left brain oriented, not as
Mhm.
like lovely people, but not as into the spiritual, say, as
Mhm.
you or myself. And all of them had experiences. Some saw sacred geometry coming out of the walls. Some felt the actual presence of some of the ancestors also coming out of the walls to like kind of
Mhm.
enclose the space. Many people had really profound experiences there. So there's also something that comes with sound where sound starts to, especially in sacred spaces, sound in sacred
Mhm.
spaces start to act like a psychedelic, I find, and creates a very spiritual, almost plant medicine type of experience. It's pretty
Mhm.
incredible.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because we know, I mean, even if you search binaural beats and different brainwave entrainment audios on YouTube, you'll find different ones that can unlock your natural DMT in your brain. And that there's pathways in our brains that we can unlock and access things naturally that don't require the use of external substances. So I believe that for sure, that it can create that. I know for me, when I go really into a deep meditative state and I really go into my core, I'm transported to another world of peace and calm. And I mean, and to me, that's where we create from. And I think that we've gotten into this space of the external and the action and the going and the doing and all the time. And I'm a goer and I'm an action taker, but our life, we need those ebbs and flows. We need to be able to come back home to ourselves. And music and sound is a way, especially if you're sort of an anxious person, it's a way to really help you become calm, peaceful. And I'll say part of the reason that I got into sound healing to begin with is I had a music background and I was diagnosed with a chronic illness in 2013. I'm in my early 30s and I'm at like the peak of my career. My business is thriving, successful, and like bam, in a matter of 90 days, I'm laid out up on the couch. I can barely eat. I'm losing weight really fast. And it was through alternative healing practices and some Western medicine and functional medicine in particular that helped me rebuild my life. But using sound healing helped me to get my body back into balance. And that's when I became such a believer in how I could have been someone that easily was like, I'm disabled for the rest of my life and I'm just going to live on the couch forever. So even the sound helped me to transform my thinking and my internal dialogue and my core vibration in such a deep, powerful way.
Yeah, it's so powerful. I mean, it's like sound can do everything. That's the cool thing about it. Is like it can do therapeutic things. It can heal, but it can restore. But it can also uplift. It can inspire. It can bring you into a focused state. I mean, it's
Yeah.
really like I've come to realize it's almost name a thing that you need or
Yeah.
desire, and I'm pretty sure sound can do that for you.
Yeah.
And even like a nice takeaway for anyone watching or listening to this episode, if you haven't already, you can even start to get into toning and humming specifically.
Hmm.
I really find humming a hilariously simple but very practical way to reduce a lot of stress in your physical body, especially if you've got like a headache. So anyone that's maybe working a little too much or in that busy sort of monkey brain go state, sometimes even just listening to some sounds and some soothing sounds can help. But also, if you're in a pinch and you don't have that access, you can even just start to hum for a couple of seconds, couple of minutes, and just like a basic hum. And then you kind of play with it, like
Hmm.
with the pitch of it, and find where in your body that you're having, let's say, some kind of an issue. You let that sound find the space in your body, and you'll know it when you feel it. Let's say it's a headache. You play around with the pitch of your voice until you feel the vibration in your forehead, and then you just repeat that same vibration, that same pitch. And I've practiced this in live music meditations workshops that I do. And I remember one day having a horrific hangover, or not hangover, it felt like a hangover, a horrific headache though. I was very dehydrated and just tired from the
Hmm.
night before. And we practiced the humming, and it completely got rid of my headache in
Hmm.
real time. So there's very fun, practical things we can do with sound on a day to day. And then there's these deep, profound things like you're mentioning with sound healing, that are also possible. So it's like it's a whole spectrum, which is
Yeah.
incredible.
It is incredible. And something else about humming is that when you hum, I learned this from my breathing coach last year, that it actually releases nitric oxide in your blood, which has really powerful properties as well. So that's something else. If you're into like James Nestor and the breathe method, he talks about that, the science behind that. So there, everything that we're talking about, it's like kind of, I think, coming back to what you were at, the question that you posed earlier about sound and everything being rediscovered. A lot of these things are science is trying to catch up with what's just already been there and what's already been known. And so now we're able to like measure it, understand it. And I'd actually like to take a minute for us to talk through the different brainwave states for people that maybe are a little like, oh, I don't know, because I know that beta is like our thinking state, right? Like that's where we're thinking. And what is gamma our kind of stressed out state, or what yeah, let's talk through
Well,
those.
yeah, 100%. So yeah, gamma is your highest brainwave state. So you can think of it, it's around like the average is like I think around what is it, 40 to 100 hertz roughly.
Okay.
And yes, it is. I would say in our day and age, we're in the more, let's say, negative side of these higher base frequencies because they do provoke, anxiety, high arousal, stress, things like that. Now, when it's optimal though, because like when it's not being, let's say, done unconsciously, when you're consciously trying to get
Uh-huh.
yourself, gamma waves, you can think about it maybe as a performance sport almost. Like that's when you're really, really awake and fully concentrated. Maybe you're playing football or soccer or something that's pretty intense sport. You're going to be in your gamma wave state because you're highly concentrating on something. So when it's productive and it comes from like a more positive state, I think gamma waves are
Mhm.
still great, but it's a very intense concentration state. It's high cognition as well, high information processing, and good for intense kind of physical learning as well. So that's like the
Mhm.
positives. Like anything, there's a polarity to it, right?
Polarity. And that's really interesting. I never came across that before, the polarity side. So we can really be in that like negative, stress kind of. To me, that would be like a flight or flight kind of space, or we can really like use it for optimal performance as well. And so that's something that we can intentionally tap into.
Yep, 100%. So if
Okay.
you're, let's say, yeah, getting into a sporting event, you could even listen to some like nice, soothing, but still like higher gamma wave binaural beats and get yourself like kind of
Yeah.
pumped up but also like meditative concentration, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
you can have a meditative state in a high
Hmm.
functioning frequency brainwave state too. It is a
Yeah.
possibility.
How about for
So
sales prospecting? I'm thinking about like putting it on, finding some gamma, and when I'm going to get into my like sales mode, or even before a sales call when I'm just going to be really dialed in and like right there with
yeah,
the person. So I'm going
yeah,
to test
gamma.
that.
You become like the Hulk, right? The gamma waves.
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, exactly, exactly. And
The
then after,
heart-centered Hulk.
yeah, exactly, the heart-centered Hulk. That's amazing. I love that. That's Marvel's next franchise for sure.
That's right.
I love it. And then, so to keep going on your question here, so then after gamma, we come down to beta waves. That's roughly 12 to 40 hertz. So for your watching and listening audience, think about hertz like it's you can think about it as a wave. So you've got the high trough, the low trough, and then it comes back. So that's one wave. So the higher the hertz, the smaller the wave. The lower the
Mhm.
hertz, the bigger the
Yep.
wave. That's why when you hear heavy bass at a club, that bass can penetrate huge walls. You know
Mhm.
why? It's because the wavelength is actually so big, it's bigger
Mhm.
than the width of the wall. And that's
Mhm.
why the bass can penetrate higher frequencies. They don't usually leave the club. You just hear that boom, 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 boom kind of sound because those are the
Mhm.
super sub low frequencies that can penetrate a lot of concrete and things like that. So just to give people a sense of what these things look like. So we're coming down now. If you think about the intensity of gamma, now we're
Mhm.
widening it a little bit, coming into beta. And so as you can imagine, beta is still higher functioning, but just not as intense as gamma. So
Mhm.
if you've got too much, again, on the more, let's say, negative side of too much beta, is going to have
Mhm.
like high adrenaline, ADHD, maybe daydreaming,
Okay.
um, or on the flip side, an inability to relax. But then when you're in a more optimal beta state, That's more of a conscious focus, really good for memorizing things, really good for problem solving. Um,
Mm.
Again, what they do kind of compare this to is a more gentle kind of coffee stimuli situation where you are beta is still a more higher arousal state. Like you're still like,
Mhm.
okay, let's do this. It's just not
Yeah.
full like performance sports or something. You know what I
Okay.
mean? And then as we continue down from beta, we've got alpha. Alpha is one of my favorites because alpha's, I find it's like the middle ground
Yeah.
between like deep meditative and like high arousal concentration. Alpha is from 8 to 12 hertz. So again, on the more maybe negative side, it might be you might have more, again, an inability to focus if you're too in the alpha. You're like almost
Mhm.
too relaxed. But when it's optimal, you've got this relaxation with a bit of focus, but
Mm.
it's like still more on the relaxation side. So when I'm doing a lot of the meditation binaural beats, I typically have them in the alpha wave because they almost they can certainly get you into a meditative state, but they can also get you into a more like calm
Mhm.
focus, if that makes sense. So
Mhm.
I find that the alpha is a nice middle ground. So those watching, listening, if you're not sure where to start, I do recommend the alpha. It's kind of think about it as like the middle ground of the binaural beats.
Mhm.
Then we come down to theta. Now we're moving closer into, let's say, uh, like a yoga nidra, like a deep meditation, not fully
Mhm.
asleep, but very close to sleep. Okay. So theta is from 4 to 8 hertz. These are big, slower moving waveforms. Um, Now, when there's too much of this on the negative side, you can kind of get like apparently like more depression or anxiety,
Yeah.
poor emotional awareness on the negative side of the theta waves. But on the positive side of the theta waves, when you're coming at it with a good intention, then you have this beautiful creative state. Theta is wicked
Mhm.
for creativity
Mhm.
and emotional intuition connection, like we were talking about before. So theta, if you're looking to tap into your intuition, kind of come more into perhaps your feminine, your right brain. Theta is really good for that because you're not
Mhm.
fully asleep and you're not as alert either. You're in that creative state. And then the
Mhm.
last one is delta, and delta is 0 to 4 hertz. Really, what delta is your deep sleep state. And this is hopefully a state. Some people never even get to delta when they're in a sleep because they're still
Mhm.
having insomnia issues or things like that. So delta is really that's the one that I use when I do my sleep pieces of music, and I recommend if anyone's got any sleep issues, then try delta binaural beats.
Mhm.
So it's a
Yes, yeah. And that is also, when you get like theta, delta, that's like the most healing state of the body as well. Like you get that deep restorative sleep, but also if you're working with a practitioner that can get you into that deep state of relaxation where you're on the edge, you're kind of awake but you're kind of asleep too, and you're calm, that's a really really healing state. So obviously this isn't medical advice, but if our listeners and viewers like suffer with any sort of chronic conditions at all, definitely explore utilizing sound, because as you were going through that, especially the polarities of both, it's like we truly do get out of tune and need to be, retuned. And so this is a
you,
way to retune and reharmonize your physicality.
yeah. I mean, quantum physics tells us we're constantly in a state of vibration, so why not continually retune your vibration, right?
That's all we are, is vibration. I had a mentor a long time ago that, it's been years. She said that all of the matter in the universe could be fit into the size of a sugar cube. Have you heard that?
Yeah, well, it's all empty space. They every
Yeah.
time we try to find what actual matter is, we can't find.
It's like
So
it's impossible to
it's all
find. I
held
know.
together. I feel like it's all held together with vibration and sound, right? And so
Yeah.
then this is like kind of the secret sauce. This is the sort of magical, amazing superpower we all have, is to tap into sound and vibration, whether we create it ourselves, listen to it externally, whatever that is.
Mhm.
Like this is an amazing tool that can do anything, whether you need to enhance just your concentration, sleep deeper, come into a creative state of mind, like the delta waves as a great place, right? Where you're on,
Mhm.
not quite asleep, not quite awake. Perfect place for creativity. If you're
Mhm.
a CEO or someone trying to think bigger picture things, this is an amazing tool to get into a creative flow state, to tap into like bigger
Mhm.
picture thinking, right? To think
Yeah.
outside the box. So it's powerful stuff.
It is so powerful. Well, thank you so much for all your insight and for just, going down the rabbit hole and geeking out. It's so fun to talk about, and it gives me opportunity to share. I did a little bit more talking on this episode than I normally do, and it's fun to share, some of those experiences that some of the listeners may have never heard me talk about before. So, how do people connect with you? Tell us where to go. We're going to have everything in the show notes, but I know you have a shop that people can purchase the meditations audio. So, and also your YouTube. So, tell us where to go find you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Celia. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So it's really easy. It's just chrisnoblemusic.com.
Okay.
For pretty much everything. You can find my music also on, like Celia said, on YouTube. I have the majority of all the things I do on YouTube. You can also find me wherever you listen to music, Spotify, Amazon, wherever. And I'm going to be releasing a lot more music there as well. But YouTube's great. You can access it though through my website, chrisnoblemusic.com, or just type Chris Noble Music into YouTube. A lot of my meditation stuff is also, like I said, on YouTube. And the cool part about that is this stuff is free to listen to. You can purchase meditations from my shop, but there's a lot of free stuff you can access on my YouTube channel. One of my most popular pieces is 40 Hertz. And I'll just quickly say 40 Hertz is another whole area that there's really amazing research being done with Alzheimer's, dementia, and neurological disorders. So I wrote a piece many years back for my grandfather who had Parkinson's, and it really did quite well online because I was using some research that a Toronto professor did. Long story short, 40 Hertz has a funny side effect. It knocks you out and puts you right to sleep. So I did this Alzheimer's piece that has a great side effect of knocking you out and putting you to sleep. So anyone with insomnia, you can check out that piece on my YouTube channel as well. So there you go.
Great. That's more insight and more information. Well, thank you. Thanks so much, Chris, for your time and your insight and for the conversation. Thank you to all of our listeners and viewers. Be sure to check out Chris Noble Music and stay connected. Until next time, bye for now.